Thank you for joining the Become a Billionaire with Me podcast. We'll journey together through the process of finding, evaluating, and purchasing our first multifamily apartment. On this show, we'll also bring in industry experts to share valuable tips that will help us become billionaires together. Here's your host, Multifamily Martin.
Welcome, everybody, to the Become a Billionaire with Me podcast. Today, we have a very special guest with us, Venkat. Venkat, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hello, folks. Thanks for your taking time to watch this podcast. I'm Venkat Avasarala. I live in Dallas, Texas. My background was in technology. I worked in corporate IT for about 14 years after taking my master's in electrical engineering from University of Alabama back in 2004, and worked at several Fortune 500 companies such as ADP, PepsiCo, Halliburton, and so forth. And my latest job was with Bank of America, which I retired from or resigned in July of 2018. And that's because, I started real estate investing back in 2007 with single family homes, graduated to multifamily syndication starting late 2015, actually 2016. And then after working in multifamily for about 2.5 years, I was able to generate enough cash flow where that I was financially independent and resigned from my IT career and doing the apartments full time.
Wow, that sounds like the dream, right? Start out small and then just continue to do it, and eventually, your properties will be able to replace your income. That's sure. Awesome. Was there anybody that inspired you to get into this business? Maybe a family, a friend, or how did you find out about it?
So I have a uncle who lives in Virginia area. So he also walked away from his job. At the time, he was a civil engineer. So we were a family of engineers. So he's a civil engineer. And what he told me when I went to his house right after graduating from University of Alabama is that he was at the time making some $35,000, supposedly some good money in mid-90s. And his employer asked him to take a different job in Seattle. But he just bought this house and his wife is pregnant, but he's being asked to go to Seattle or commute to Seattle or things like that. And that's when it dawned upon him that, we cannot be dependent too much on this job. We need to figure out our way. Nothing wrong with doing job for a few years until we figure things out, make investments and things like that. But on the long term, it won't be very conducive to what you want to do in life. Basically, the job might be limiting you, is what dawned upon him. And then he started some business. He was into soil testing, so civil engineering stuff. Then again, he's working for himself, and I saw the lifestyle that he's been having, pretty much, pretty laid back, bringing in so much cash flow on a monthly basis once he have his own business. That really impressed upon me that I got to do something like that. And then ever since I started my IT career, I was looking for some investments. I looked in stocks. Didn't work out for me. I was making some, losing some. At the end of the year, it's always a negative few thousand. Yeah. So I figured that after doing stocks for 2004, 5, and 6, posting 3 negative stock portfolios, I figured that, okay, I'm not too smart for small stock market, and then figured I got to do something else. And real estate is something which naturally, I got inclined into.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, you have an interesting journey there. What would you recommend a newbie do to get into this business?
Well, real estate, the good thing is everybody needs real estate, right? And government is behind us. So this is one of this business where think of it like, I came from India, which is a socialist country. Government takes it upon them to provide safe shelter to its citizens, right? Yeah. There's goods and bads about it, but we are a capitalist nation. The government directly doesn't get involved in providing housing and all that, but that's why they back investors like you and me to provide safe safe houses and safe apartments for its citizens to live in. It's always good to be in a business where government is actually backing you. And by that, what I mean is that you see all the laws around real estate, the depreciation, the tax incentives, the loans that they give, the Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae loans that they give, it's all backing us. They're like, go, make those houses, make those apartments. So I really like to be in that area. Now, to answer your question, how you would want to start in this business is get an education, right? Unfortunately, none of our degrees, right? I got master's in electrical engineering, and I gave 18 years of my time on this planet towards this education, but none of that education prepared me or taught me how to be financially independent.
Yeah.
It just taught me how to get a job, if that, right? Even today, people graduating out of the universities are not job ready. You still have to go and grind, and even
yeah, I have an MBA, and they didn't teach me anything about this.
There you go. There you go, right? So what's lacking is that none of the education that we are going to get, the mainstream education that we are getting these days, are providing even basic money management skills on how to invest and how to plan financials and things like that. So I would certainly say that read upon it, but try to get some formal education. In my case, when I started in real estate, right, again, I originally came from India, and I have no knowledge of real estate in this country.
Yeah.
So back in 2007, I was able to locate an investment club here, where I actually joined there, met with so many people who are already accomplished, and learn from them. So that is the kind of education that we have. You don't want a classroom kind of education. That's just useless, right? So what you need is talk to real people, learn from their real experiences, so that you don't have to make all those mistakes. And then finally, I worked with a mentor, right? So again, single family, not so much mentorship. It's just talking to different investors, learning right from wrong, things like that. But when you come to multifamily, I started syndicating them. What that means is, I took other people's money. I have a partner, but between him and me, we raised $66 million from people.
Wow.
Right? From working stiffs, that's hard-earned money.
Yeah.
So we raised $66 million. Now, when you take other people's money and try to invest that, it changes everything, right? Your risk tolerance has to drastically come down. Your preparedness should drastically go up, and things like that. So, well, how do you go about it, right? So obviously, yes, you can buy one or two properties and see what happens and figure it out, but there's a high chance that you might lose somebody's money if you do that. Yeah. So me and my partner chose to we actually met at a mentorship, and we worked with a mentor. This mentor has been doing multifamily investing for 15 years. So many full cycle lives, full cycle completions. So we learned from the gentleman and worked under his supervision for a couple of years until we know exactly what needs to be done and how to see through the risk in every decision that we make, and how to make more decisions, good decisions than that.
Yeah. Wow. That's definitely the way to do it, right? You don't want to take people's money and make all these promises that you're going to fulfill, all these returns, these, 10, 20, 30% returns, and, lose their money.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's definitely not the way to do it. Yeah, that's awesome. What would be the best way for a newbie to get into this business, to find a deal? What would be the best way that you would recommend that someone new would be able to find their first property?
Again, if you're talking about single family, it becomes much easier, right? So it boils down to you or a newbie to build some kind of rapport, show some readiness, and working with a broker, right? So when I say readiness, what does that mean? So you cannot go to a broker and ask that, hey, find me a $200,000 house when the whole neighborhood is at 400,000. So you definitely didn't do your homework. They'll shoot you down, right? So obviously you have to do the homework and have realistic expectations, get pre-qualified and things like that, and start working with the broker, and eventually you can land some deals, right? So that's single family. So multifamily, again, is a different world altogether, because at the end of the day, yes, it's real estate, but at the end of the day, it's business that you're buying, right? It's a business, generates cash flow every month. So the way in multifamily is, again, get the education. There's so many moving parts and variables that you need to master in order to underwrite and put together a deal, a feasible deal. So what that entails is, once you come work with a mentor, what happens is, working with a mentor not only give you the education, but you can borrow the clout of that person. So when we are saying we are working with a mentor who has 10 plus years experience in this, obviously that person will have some clout, right? So he knows some people, he can refer you to some people, he can vouch for you, things like that. So that's definitely something that you can capitalize on. But more importantly, what you need to do is, again, readiness, right? So you have to understand how the loan process works, and there is no pre-qual per se, because when we talk about apartments, the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac is not lending looking at my financial status, my bank balance. Yes, that is required. I need to submit the paperwork, but that's not what's helping them to decide whether to lend or not. They're looking at the deal, the cash flow, right? The future cash flows and things like that. So the better you can underwrite, and the better you equip yourself with the knowledge on how the loan process works, that takes you a long way. Now, then let's come to the meat of all this, right? Every seller, every broker, there's only one thing running in their mind. Can this guy close? And there are two parts to that, right? There are two parts to that. One is obviously equity. That's the elephant in the room. Can he bring $2, $3, $4, $5, $10 million, depending on the deal? We did 12 deals so far, me and my partner, and the smallest equity check we required was 1.2 million. The largest was about 10 million, right? So it varies depending on the size per deal, right? So can this individual rally the troops and raise money and close, and can bring so many $1 million onto the closing table? That's one thing. And the second thing is, so multifamily contracts are at least 60 days. 60 days can be extended for another 30 to 60 days, right? Several things have to align in order for you to get to close. So again, what they're looking for is, can I trust this individual and award this deal to this particular individual, and have a reasonable belief that this individual will work everything in good faith when something unforeseen comes. Example, there might be a fire while I'm in contract to purchase a property. There might be a fire, right? A small fire. Am I going to just bail, looking that as an opportunity, or will I work with the seller and the broker to figure these things out? Hey, what happened? What kind of damages are? Who pays for that damage? And let's complete the transaction. So that's the kind of mindset they want. So it's the character they're looking for, right? So in order to establish yourself in a market, it's really important that we have to prove ourselves on both these grounds, right? On the equity side and the character side as well. So equity side, I would say, is much more easier, right, than displaying character, because in order to display the character, so that's where I was saying earlier, the cloud part, right? So you can borrow the cloud, and you can have the mentor or whoever you're working with who's already well established, have them vouch for you. So that takes care of the character part. And when it comes to the equity, obviously, it's never a good idea to start looking for equity once the deal is awarded. So you need to have a very crisp idea on how exactly you're going to raise money. And there's nothing wrong with taking partners. It's a whole different thing, of course, right? You cannot partner willy-nilly with anybody and everybody. Obviously, you need to have set criteria, somebody who can complement your skills, who have a clean background, who are easy to work with, and somebody that you like. Because in business, we make mistakes, knowingly or unknowingly, right? When you make a mistake, you cannot start fighting with each other. You should like each other enough so that we can forgive and forget and move forward, right? So that's the kind of point. So that's a whole different sector on topic on how to pick a partner. But yeah, sometimes you have to bring in a partner to help you raise that money and share the compensation with them.
Yeah. Maybe let's step back a little bit. You've been talking about syndication and raising private money, and you said you raised over, was it like $60 million so far, something like that? Yeah. Maybe let's shed a little bit light on that. Like, how did you get started? I mean, did you just go to your neighbor, your friend, your family? How do you pitch this idea of, hey, I need to raise $10 million. Can you lend me some money?
A lot of networking. So I didn't let my own sister and brother-in-law invest with me until deal number 4.
Yeah.
I commonly hear that, you have to go to your friends and family to raise money. Nothing wrong with that, but I would really suggest that wait at least until deal number 3 or 4 until you have some experience.
Yeah.
Not that their money is valuable than other people or nothing like that. It's just that it's never a good idea until to involve the friends and family, because you got to see them every day for the rest of your life.
Yeah, you don't want
Right?
to break those relationships.
Right. So it's a big no-no. So what I chose to do is networking, right? So I used to hit up. Dallas is blessed with so many investment um, investment groups and a lot of meetups and a lot of events, conferences, things like that. Dallas. I mean, in every major city is, and we have our fair share in Dallas too. So sometimes it looks very tedious to hit up all these locations and events to meet with the people, exchange business cards, and then follow up with them after the event and build a relationship, right? Build a relationship. That's it. It's not a quick way. It took me like about 7 months before I land my first deal. But by the time I landed my first deal, I knew enough people that they're willing to give me a $1.2 million check between me and my partner, Ron,
Yeah.
right? So we were able to raise comfortably $1.2 million for our very first deal. So there's no shortcut to it unless you can find somebody, a family office or somebody out in New York who can write you a check for the whole amount. We raised on that particular deal, the minimum was $40,000. So we raised on average about $50,000 or so from about 30 people, or 25 people or so. We had 25 investors in that particular deal, and we raised money like that.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. That's definitely interesting. You're the power networker when it comes to raising money. That's awesome. What is the hardest thing in your mind about this multifamily business?
So I don't think anything is particularly hard, with the caveat though. It was a lot easier 5 years before than doing it right now, right? So because we were just coming, it was a slow recovery recession, if you will. It was a very sharp recession that we had back in 2009. We lost about 7 to 8 million jobs. And in order to get all those, in order to just break even on all the lost jobs, it took us like 5 years until 2012 or something like that. So it was a very slow recovery. So real estate didn't take off until we pretty much broke even on all those jobs, right? So 2012 is kind of a hockey stick year where it was low, 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 and then boom, it started going up. So I bought my single family properties in 2012, 13, and 14. And I bought all my multifamily starting 2016, 17, 18, and 19. And even if I compare 2019 to 2016 when I got started, the pricing was much feasible to buy these properties. And the rent growths are much stronger 3 to 4 years back than they're today. So from that standpoint, even it's challenging for me to put together a deal. Because previously we used to see, let's say, 10 deals and maybe one of them work. Right now, we got to look at 50 deals in order to make one work, right? So that aspect is there. Other than that, if you look at the availability of education, there's so much education out there. I'm not talking about universities again. I'm not saying anybody should go to, again, a University of Dallas to get a real estate degree. No. The real world education from somebody who does this on a daily basis, right? So that is available. You just need to go look, find yourself a good mentor or an investing group, be a part of it, and learn from people. So that aspect is already there. The second aspect is equity. Like I said, right, again, I'm an IT guy and my partner was an IT guy. It's not like we are in sales, we are super slick in selling, nothing like that. We are boring engineers. Our backgrounds are engineers, right? I mean, that's opposite of salesmanship, right? So we were able to raise $66 million. So the equity is there. It's just that you have to find the right deal, know everything you need to know about it so that the confidence will ooze out of you when you talk about your deal, right? You'll be excited about the deal and people will pick up the cues and invest with you, right? You should be able to tell a good story on what the business plan is, how exactly you're gonna, take this project to the fruition and all that. And then when you come to the third aspect is, so we talked about the knowledge, in order to learn how to underwrite and how to find a property and how to put a property under contract. So that's the education part. That's plenty available. It's just that you have to be a part of some kind of a investment club. Again, the reason why I'm keeping saying words like mentorship, investment club is life is short.
Yeah.
We cannot make 20 mistakes in next 20 years and learn from experience and then start do right things, right? It's just not the way it works. Why make all the mistakes in the book when you can learn from somebody who has already made all of them, right? So that you will take off after the first couple of years. You can be very cautious, and then it becomes much easier, and it'll become a hockey stick kind of thing. So that's why learning from other people is important. It's paramount in this business. If you don't network, if you are not open-minded, if you don't learn from each other, this may not be the business for you, right? If you're a hermit, maybe not the business for you, right? So that's the education part, and we talk about the equity part. Then the loans, oh, they are plentiful, right? Uncle Sam is completely behind us. So again, let me give you an example. So every year, US government allows Fannie and Freddie to issue about $40 billion in apartment loans, right? To help people like me to buy apartments, 40 for Fannie and 40 for Freddie. Well, they ran out of all that money by the third quarter of this year, right? So we are in December. They ran out of this money in, let's say, July, August, not even at the end of the third quarter. Well, what are you supposed to do? Fannie and Freddie Mac cannot make any more loans because they ran out of money. They lent all the $80 billion. There's nothing more to give. So overnight, the conservatorship, right? Because right now Fannie and Freddie are still under government control because of what happened before the recession, right? They kind of lost their shirt, government bailed them out. So they're still under a thumb of government. So overnight they said that, you know what? You get another $80 billion to lend, right? So why are they doing that? Why is government, you know how hard it is for government to do anything?
I know, right?
Well, these guys just woke up and say, you know, oh, what? You ran out of the money? I'll take another 80, right?
Yeah.
Why is that? They know how important it is that what we do and to the well-being of its citizens, right? So right now there is a huge migration pattern from rural and suburban areas to the urban areas. That is happening, not just in the United States, everywhere. It's happening in India, Brazil, China, everywhere, right? Because of the automation, globalization, whatever you call it. People cannot make it anymore a decent living without a college degree in a rural area, right? Even with the college degree in rural area, because let's say cultivation, previously it used to take like 100 people to do 1,000 acres. Now maybe you need 5, right? Because of the automation. So people are coming to cities by droves. It's a phenomenon which is happening across the world. Well, just because they're coming, we don't magically get these apartments, right? Somebody has to build them, somebody has to finance them, somebody has to operate them, and some of them may be dilapidated, maybe just condemned or something. So an investor like me has to step in, fix it up, and put people in it, and provide affordable housing. You can provide any housing, right? If you build brand new apartments, you can rent in Dallas a single bedroom apartment for like $2,000. Well, not many people don't have $2,000 for a 1-bedroom, right? So they would rather rent a 60s or 70s built apartment and pay $800, right? So who's going to provide that $800 apartment? Me. Right? So they see that it's really important what we do, provide this safe housing for its citizens. So government is behind us, right? So to answer your question, we talked about the education, we talked about the equity, we talked about the loans, the bigger part of the check, which has to be brought to the table. So that's all plenty available. So I would say that a lot of people just give it up so very soon. They try. Of course, if it's easy, everybody will do it.
Right.
Everybody will do it. I won't say it's easy, but it's doable. It's doable. And I'm the example. You know, I got nothing to do with real estate. I'm an engineer. I worked in IT. I didn't even born in this country. I wasn't here until I was 22 years old. So it's very doable, right? Yeah. So it's the mindset. I would say that it's the mindset and the perseverance. Displaying those two things is the challenge for the most newbie investors, I would say.
Yeah, that's awesome. And when analyzing a market, what are the things that you're looking for? You kind of touched on maybe some growth. Is it job growth? Is there a specific formula? And what type of formulas do you look for in the property? Are you going after specific cap rate, cash on cash return? Are there any things that you look
Sure.
for?
Let's talk numbers. So again, the whole idea, at least what I do is, there's several ways to skin the cat in real estate, right?
Yeah,
So you can do storage, you can do hotels, several things.
yeah,
And even in apartments, there are new builds, and there is a train of thought where let's not build anything, but let's buy off somebody who just built a class A apartments. And then there is this class B and C. I would very much like to buy a class A apartment, meaning something which is built after year number 2000, right? They are like
newer
very good
stuff.
shape, up to the code, no leaks, no chillers, nothing to worry about. It's easy. You can buy something, give it for property management, and just disappear, living on the other side of the world, and nothing happens. So, I mean, everything checks out, right?
Yeah,
The only problem is a lot of institutionals want those things as well, right? But let's say Prudential, a life insurance company, they want to hold that in their portfolio. A lot of insurance companies want to own that. Pension funds want to own that because they are looking for about 4% to 5% per year cash flow. That's all they need. And for us, do all the work and get 4%, 5%. I mean, it's just won't be making enough sense for us to get involved in that space because these institutions and pension funds and insurance companies, they bid the prices up so much that they trade at very low caps, like 2 cap, 3 cap in certain markets. So, and you might think that why are they doing that, right? At so less return, 4 to 5% return. Why? Well, if not for the Class A apartments, they would go invest in treasuries, 10-year treasury bills. And right now they're yielding 1.5%. The way the pension fund looks at it is, if I put money in treasury bills, I'm only getting 1.5. But if I invest in apartment, Class A apartments, which is pretty safe. Yes, it's not as safe as T-bills, but then again, you got to take some risk for reward. But they're getting 3x reward. They're getting 4 to 5% return and not 1.5%. They think that I can generate 3 times the return by not taking too much risk. So for them, it's a very good trade-off between the risk and reward, and 4 to 5% risk-adjusted returns are incredible for them, not for you and me. So that's why we get involved in B and C area. Well, what is B and C? So loosely defined, these are the properties, workforce housing. So these are the housing that people live, make household income anywhere between 30 to 60, 30 to $70,000 a year, right? Mm-hmm. After that, people will go buy a home, right? But this 30 to 60 $1,000 a year household income, they are renters by necessity. They also want to buy a home, but they can't. They just don't have enough money or credit or whatever it takes to buy a home and keeping a home. And sometimes it's about the transient nature of their job. Maybe they have to move every 2 years to take a job, and that won't work on it when you buy a home, right? You got to be in one place.
Yeah.
So whatever may be the reason, these are renters by necessity, and these properties are built in 1960s, 70s, 80s. And if they are built in 60s or early 70s, they have chiller systems, not individual HVACs, but the chiller systems. Some of them have flat roofs, not the pitched roofs. And some of them have aluminum wiring, not copper wiring. So there's some baggage which comes along with it, right? Mm-hmm. And also you're working with a tenant who may not have 800 credit score, right? They will have maybe 550, maybe they have some evictions in the back, in their background. Maybe their credit is not perfect. So we're dealing with a less credit-worthy tenant than a Class A apartment owner would, right? So definitely we have some baggage. But then again, we can produce a much higher cash IRRs for our investors, even in the syndication model. So we have seen that we sold 3 properties, one in Arizona, one in Oklahoma, and one in Carrollton, late last year, early this year. So November 2018 to January 2019 is when we sold 3 properties. We averaged 35% IRR. Yeah. And a couple of these deals are more than doubled in like 18 months to 24 months, right? So again, I'm not saying that we can do that all day long here because the market has moved quite a bit. But then again, look, yes, there is baggage, but there's a huge upside also for doing this. So what me and my partner does is we go buy these B and C class apartments with some upside. Well,
Yeah.
what do I mean by upside, right? So we are looking for some apartments which are less than perfect. What that means is like maybe the apartments are not really in line with the rest of the competition. Maybe they're very dated. Maybe they're commanding only maybe a couple of $100 or even $100 less rent than their competing properties, which are much nicer, because they've been rehabbed or whatnot. Or we are looking for out-of-state owners who live in California and who use their properties in Texas as just ATM machines and not going here and running it as a business, giving the attention that the property needs. So the one thing about this business is the more attention you give, the better you will do. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
Because here we depend a lot on employees, right? Employees of property management companies. They manage it for you, but if you don't focus enough on the property, they'll just do the bare minimum. If you want the property to excel, you obviously want to ideally try to be local and show up at the property more than once a year. Right?
Yeah.
And also at least talk to the management company once a week. We talk to our management company on all our properties at least once a week. And these are just detailed property by property reviews on the income, leasing, and several issues concerning every property.
Yeah.
So definitely we are looking for properties which have some upside. We call it value add. So I should be able to go there and do something and either raise the income or decrease the expenses. Money is money, right? Either you raise income or decrease expenses. And if you get to do both, that's even better, right? So we're looking for those kind of properties where we can go and spend some money, spruce the property up inside out, raise rents, decrease expenses, and we can decrease expenses such as payroll. Sometimes if the owner was not paying attention, a 200 unit property who usually needs 7 employees, 3 in the office, 4 outside, maybe operating with 15 employees. We saw that happen, right? Because nobody's paying attention, right?
Yeah.
So that's a big opportunity to reduce expense. And sometimes it's negotiating a better utility contracts with energy company and the gas companies. As simple as that. We once reduced electric bill from $3,000 to $1,000 a month for a property by making a phone call. Because the owner was so busy that he's paying 17 cents a kilowatt hour. And we made a call and got into a contract because they were out of contract for years. They didn't pay attention. And we went into the property, made a call, and then got the contract at 4.5 cents or something like that. So he drastically reduced the electric bill. Sometimes it can be as simple as that. And another thing is water expense. Because we're talking about these older properties, some of these properties have original toilets from 70s or 80s, right? So now we get much more water efficient toilets. So replacing them saves a bunch of water and decrease your expense, your apartment expense. So things like that. So this is what we look for, and we look to produce anywhere between 8 to 12% annual cash on cash for our investors. We don't touch a deal if it doesn't produce less than 8. If it produces less than 8%, we want that buffer. That 8% is a good number that we're looking at. And also we look for about 14 to 15% IRR to our investors. So what that means is about 80% return on investment in 5 years.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. It definitely seems like you've set up a great system. You talked about mentorship, the power of mentorship, finding deals, financing deals, raising private money. You just shared so much information, and I love speaking to people like you. I think our listeners will get a lot out of, our discussion here. If people want to get a hold of you, what would be the best way for someone to get a hold of you?
Sure. They can email me at Venkat, that's V as in Victor, ENKAT at ravenmultifamily.com. One word, RAVEN multifamily.com. Or they can visit our website at ravenmf.com, RAVENMF.com.
Great.
Or they can call me at 281-727-9238.
Great. Yeah, and I'll put all of this information in the show notes to make it easy for listeners to reach out if they want to reach out to you. But yeah, I want to respect your time, and I want to thank you so much for joining the Become a Billionaire with Me podcast. You have provided us with so much information and a wealth of knowledge. Thank you again.
Sure, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Become a Billionaire with Me podcast. If you liked what you heard, please help by giving us a 5-star review on iTunes. If you have any suggestions, please feel free to make a comment in the comment section. Let's become billionaires together.